Hello, everybody! What's up? Welcome to another day of Quarantine with Christine. It is Monday, and today is a day that Arizona, where I live, has finally announced that we're going to go shelter in place starting tomorrow. What's up, Hannah? And so I'm very excited and grateful that our governor has finally decided to do something about that. Look at all these homies. What's up, everybody? Is that Cole? Hi, Colbert. What's up, Lauren? All right. Today, I'm very excited because we're talking with my friend Hannah Bonifacius, and she is just one of my longtime favorite people. And we are talking about some things that I think are pretty important. So I'm just going to invite her in. I really nothing to say about this stuff. She's way smarter than me, so let's see if it happens. Oh, hello!
Hi.
Hi, how's it going?
I almost, like, honest to goodness, had a hard time getting on this because I just watched two really emotional videos.
Oh, okay. About what?
Hi, Lauren. One was a 14-year-old who had her last day of chemo, and all of her friends lined the streets in their cars to cheer her on.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
you
so
feel it.
sweet.
The second, ready for this one, a man whose wife is in the Alzheimer wing of a nursing home stands outside her window and sings Amazing Grace to her, and she sings back. Yeah,
Oh.
correct. How am I supposed to? Yeah. Okay, yeah. I mean,
Well, you know,
how are
do
we
you want
supposed
me
to
to
move on?
do you want me to help you try to feel better?
Oh boy. I'm
Yeah, is that a
scared of
yes or a no?
I think yes.
Oh, look at this.
Hot
Guys, you know
cake.
what this is? This is a shirt that Hannah sent me that was like a hate crime because this is my own baby picture, and she sent it to me without signing it. So first of all, she's making fun of me
I
for when I was
accidentally
fat.
pranked you.
You did burn me so bad, and you never signed it. So for weeks I was like, who's doing this to me? Why is anyone doing this to me without taking credit?
Can we just talk about what it says
Yeah,
underneath your fat face?
it says hotcakes, which I don't even know what that means.
You called yourself that one time in
I don't
a video that we did, and
I don't
I just
remember
have
that.
never gotten over. I've never gotten over it, and so I had to make it into a t-shirt. And if any of you want me to make it into a t-shirt for you, I won't, but you can go online and do it really easy.
I won't. Thank you for the honesty. Well, it feels like we've gotten off to a really good start. So, before we move on,
Here,
tell
what are
everybody who you are, what's your name, what do you do, why do we know each
only
other?
we'll never talk in that voice again. Okay. Um, I'm Hannah, and I live in Chicago. Um, what are the questions again? What do I do?
What do you do? Why
Okay.
did I post a Marcel the Shell GIF in your
Oh,
honor?
you're in the GIF camp. How
Yeah,
about that?
because I got corrected that the person that created them says that it's pronounced
No
GIF.
way. It's a
So, I mean, I used to
it's a
pronounce it
linguistic
GIF, but
question
then I was
of our
corrected.
time, I think. Okay, so I
Yeah,
live in
you're cutting in and out a
Chicago.
little bit.
Sorry. I'm not doing anything
It's
to my
okay.
phone, so maybe we should kick Cole off the internet.
Oh my gosh, that's so rude. Cole, you can stay.
Um, okay, so I moved to Chicago. My husband and we moved to Chicago about 5 years ago. Prior to living in Chicago, we lived in central Illinois, so around the area where we went to college at Lincoln, in Lincoln, Illinois. And when we were in central Illinois, my husband was a pastor, associate pastor, and I was working in a small town. It's an anomaly in central Illinois because it has a large immigrant population in that town. There's a a pork processing factory.
Cool.
So in fact, hold on, my students are texting me right now as I'm doing this. But because of the meat packaging factory, which isn't an anomaly in the United States to have these, factories in the middle of nowhere, and then all of a sudden, a vibrant immigrant community springs up. And so the community that I worked at a community college that was located across from the factory. And my students were coming from Western and Central Africa, and then all over Latin America. Those were our two main populations. So I was teaching English as a second language to adults there at the community college. I loved it, but I would spend 5 days a week driving back and forth about 45 minutes to this town, and then coming back, and on the weekends working another job and then doing stuff at the church. And we kind of came to this place where it was like, I really, really enjoy being with my students. I want to be able to go to quinceañeras if they invite me. I want to be able to go to baptisms and go to weddings and bodas, things like that, So what would it mean to be all in? There was an opportunity for both of us to get full-time jobs really in this small town. Because outside of the factory, there just aren't a lot of places to work. And so I ended up, at that time, I was also reading a book called Welcoming the Stranger. It was put out by Matthew Sorens and Jenny Yang, who work for an organization that I now work for called World Relief. I just saw Jake's hand clapping. It's very distracting to see these things. Thank you for that. But yeah, it's so nice because I'm seeing a lot of people that I know coming up here. Like a reunion. It's really cool, isn't it? Hi, everyone. So we decided, after I read that book, I thought, wow, I feel like this has really given me a theological perspective I didn't have before about immigration. It's giving me some insight I didn't have before. And this would be an organization, these two people work for this organization. This is, one that I would be interested in working for. Our friend, Josh Sharif, had moved up into this neighborhood of Albany Park, Chicago, to plant a church. And he ended up coming back down to visit us, and I'm telling him about this book, and he's like, Hannah, there's a World Relief office in my neighborhood. And
no way, yeah.
One of the teachers attends the new church plant. So I ended up getting into contact, and then so we ended up coming up to Chicago, moving into a highly diverse neighborhood where our World Relief office is located, so that we could live in community with the people that we, that I work with and I see every day and I get a grocery shop with. It's really, really great. Yeah. Hi, Caesar. Hi, Joy.
Hi, Joy. What's up? That's really cool. So I have gotten to visit you in your neighborhood, obviously, and it is really special. It's really cool how there's just such a rich, sense of, different cultures woven together. I really enjoyed that. Can you talk to me about how has COVID-19 affected your neighborhood and your students?
I liked what Brooke did on Friday when she said, in order to understand our economy in a recession, you have to understand a healthy economy. And so I'm kind of going to take a page from Brooke's book.
Brooke's book, hey!
And I'm going to just explain what our neighborhood looks like when it's, everything, when COVID-19 isn't here. So,
sure.
Our neighborhood is, like I said, highly diverse. There are, for example, I live one building behind our main street. Chicago is a city of neighborhoods. Our neighborhood, Albany Park, actually, I wanted to do this. Let's see if it works. Not a close shot of my face, but this is my neighborhood.
Okay, cool.
So it's our map right here. And that's about two square miles.
Okay. That means nothing to me because I'm terrible at spatial reasoning, but for some of you, it might mean something to you.
Yeah, so two square miles. I mean, you could walk 2 miles pretty easily. Even you could.
Could I?
You could. run it, but you could walk it.
Okay.
I couldn't run it, but there are 50,000 of us in
Oh,
2 square.
wow.
And the main road that goes through our neighborhood, like I live right behind it, there's a Korean bakery, there's a Korean barber shop, there's a laundromat, there's an Iraqi hair place, there's a Mexican restaurant, there's a Chinese buffet, there's a strip club, there's a Middle Eastern home health care place. I mean, it's
That's
just,
amazing.
we're all mixed up, which
Yeah.
is honestly kind of rare for Chicago in one neighborhood to have that many
Sure.
people of different ethnic backgrounds living in one place.
Can I ask you, do you know why that neighborhood particularly has such a rich combination?
What I understand, and if there are some people on here who know more about our neighborhood, but some of the research is that we've done is our neighborhood has like always kind of been a stepping stone for newly arrived immigrants and refugees.
Okay.
Part of that is because there's affordable rent here, and there are several refugee resettlement agencies in the area of my neighborhood.
Okay.
So they're resettling people closer to their offices where there's affordable rent. Part of it is that this was established early 1900s by a large immigrant Jewish community, and they built up the businesses on our main street, and there's still remnants of the Jewish community here. There's a Jewish high school, boys' school down the street.
Okay.
Yeah, I think affordable rent. It's 45 minutes from downtown on the Brown Line train, and that just means that there's accessible transportation, but it's going to take you a while.
Sure.
So some people don't want to live that far from downtown if they're working there.
Yeah.
They're not going to live up here.
Yeah.
But it definitely has the feel of just, I mean, the signs all along our street are in different languages. There's mosques and synagogues and churches, and synagogues that are mosques that were churches that were synagogues. You know, like there's recycled buildings.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
there's a lot of hair salons, there's a lot of restaurants, there's a lot of bakeries. You can get food from all over the world. It's just like paradise. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been a couple of times, but it was really great. Also, you did remind me that as you guys are in here, if you have questions or comments to contribute to the conversation, please do. That's important to me. I think it's important to Hannah. Okay, so you were coming back to then how has COVID-19 affected your neighborhood and your students? And you were starting to explain to us that this is like the layout of what your neighborhood is actually like without COVID-19, this amazing, like interconnected fabric of many different cultures and people and lots of people in tight quarters.
Yeah. So if you think about it, it is hard to just like stay away from people, but our neighborhood is always going at all times because people are working second and third shifts. There are a lot of people struggling with maybe just on the lower wealth index or income instability. And so still texting, students still texting. So basically our neighborhood never sleeps, but also there are just a lot of places that are owned and operated by people of immigrant and refugee backgrounds. So a lot of restaurants. Thinking about like if you were to think of a small town, it's like mom and pop shops, really, you know. And so, they've all shuttered their windows. They've all got bars across their windows. They're doing delivery. All the hair salons have closed. There's still like travel agencies. All of them have closed. You're thinking about these just like really practical, everyday places you go into, and they've closed. And they're people who already don't have income to fall back on.
Sure. Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
it feels like, you know, we're all in this tight space together. Everyone's already kind of on top of each other in apartments. But but now we can't really talk to our neighbors or see each other. There's a lot of churches in our neighborhood, like small Spanish storefront churches. They're not able to meet, like we don't have high technology, and it's just it feels eerie to look out on the street and not see the bus being full and not to see people passing in. Yeah, it's changing our neighborhood, and I think today I took a walk. I'm officially out of quarantine. Whew.
Hey.
And today was my day, and I took this walk down our main road, and I thought, these businesses aren't just gonna bounce back.
Yeah.
They were already making it from day to day or month to month.
Sure. Yeah.
Like surviving this, we're gonna see a lot of them probably close, and that really broke my heart.
Yeah, that makes sense. This question is for you, and I guess anyone in here that also lives in your neighborhood, but do you feel like you can sense what the spirit is in your neighborhood now? Is it like fearful? Is it angry? Is it just disappointed? Or is it fine? Is everyone like super positive? Like what is the spirit of the neighborhood as all these stores have been having to close down and a lot of the businesses, like that sense of maybe the reality is starting to set in that some of these might not recover?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of sadness. I think there definitely, just from talking to my students. So something I didn't say is I do work for World Relief now, and I teach I teach 5 days a week. English is a second language to the adults there. I have a class of about 20 students right now, and we've been doing distance learning. And we have like WhatsApp groups and things like that. So I'm checking in with them. They're checking in with me pretty frequently. They're checking in with me and making sure that I'm okay and I'm eating. And
that's awesome.
My husband's eating, But talking with them, they are just pretty scared to leave their homes and just to go out and take a walk. A lot of them are stay-at-home, or I don't want to say stay-at-home moms. They are now stay-at-home moms. They have kids in elementary school, and they're having to figure out how to homeschool their kids in their second or third or fourth language.
Wow, I didn't even think about that.
How to keep kids at home in apartments that are 600, 700 square feet.
Wow. So Beyond Sound Bites, I don't know what your first name is, said so far around 80 people that World Relief serves in the Chicago region have been laid off, which is crazy. That's a lot of people.
So I'm receiving, thanks for that, Jake. So Jake is a coworker of mine.
Okay, cool. Hi, Jake.
And I'm going to talk about his podcast Beyond Sound Bites here in a little bit. But something to think about is just we are getting calls really frequently of people being laid off because these are hospitality jobs. A lot of them are working. They're working at the airport. They're working in hotels. They're working, and then some of them can't stop working. They don't have factories aren't going to close, so people are stressed. I feel that. It's a good question, and I feel fear and I feel sadness. I also see resilience. Some students that I do are just kind of like, well, we've been through a lot already, like, and then sometimes, everyone's going to grieve differently and in different ways. So it's like one day one student will come to me and say that, and then the next day they're going to be like, nothing's right, and it's really hard, and this sucks, and I'm bored. I mean, I think a lot of my students feel the same way. All of us feel inside all the time, pretty bored.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I feel like you're already starting down this road a little bit. So let me ask you, do you feel like COVID-19 is affecting refugees in a different way than the average American citizen? And if so, how?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when I think about people of refugee background, people who are currently not in the United States in camps or are in cities that aren't where they're from. It's the city that they fled to. I mean, they're already particularly vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
And then now being even more exposed. And in a camp, where are you supposed to go?
Right.
How are you supposed to really stay in place?
And correct me if I'm
Um,
wrong, like resources are already limited in those camps, correct? And
that's
so,
exactly right.
okay.
Thinking about borders being closed is really important too.
Hmm.
When we think about how refugees are more vulnerable, um, right now our border is closed to anyone trying to claim asylum,
Hmm.
and there are people that were under it's no MPP. It's known as Remain in Mexico. The Remain in Mexico policy of if you were seeking asylum in the United States, you sought asylum here, but then you were returned to Mexico until your court date.
Hmm.
I do have a couple of lawyer friends, immigration lawyer friends, on this call as well. So Mia or Leonor, if you want to correct me on anything I say, things have been changing really rapidly.
Yeah.
Um, in policy in terms of policies and laws, but our borders are close to people, and so people are literally stuck on one side
Hmm.
of the border, and they might have a family member on the other side of the border, and that was
Wow.
happening before COVID-19,
Yeah.
but it's gotten even more strict. The border to Canada has just closed,
Mm.
and so we just think about the idea of movement. Who is
Yeah.
a refugee? A person who is a refugee or is labeled a refugee is someone who has fled, which requires movement. And COVID
Hmm.
19 is making everyone stay in place. You literally
Yeah.
can't move, even if you're in great danger, even if you
Yeah.
need to asylum, even if you need to apply for refugee status. It's not really open to you right now. And if you have already been granted refugee status, if you've already, um, been in a camp, well, we have in the United States, all refugee resettlement is closed now. So no new arrivals are
Mm.
arriving to the United States. No one is coming. They're
Oh,
not.
wow.
So maybe you were granted an acceptance to the United States and you were going to board an airplane. Imagine that is
Mm.
now off the table for you don't know how long.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Your friend Mia says, my clients are very triggered by this. They know what it's like to face death, and most just arrived at a place of peace, off peace, right?
of
Of
peace, I
peace.
think.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and then yeah, just what Mia's saying, like so in Chicago we have a stay in place order.
mhm.
Um and
We
when the
just got that
governor
today in Arizona.
yeah, and when the governor announced that, something that we immediately had to do as teachers or caseworkers, people who are in pretty consistent contact
Yeah.
um, with people, was to notify them, but then spell out this is not militarization, that the
Mm,
police are not going to enforce this by arresting anyone who leaves their house.
mhm.
Um, because that is the way that many
Oh my
countries do
gosh.
this.
Yeah, I didn't even
You
think about that. That's insane.
So what Mia's saying about it being triggering, there are many layers to this. You can't move, you can't go places. How is it going to be enforced? If I
Yeah.
leave my home and I do get sick, then you have to think about where are you going to go?
Mm,
Where are you going to go to the doctor? What if you're
yeah.
uninsured?
Yeah.
What does it look like? So um, those are some ways in which I would say people of immigrant and refugee background are far more vulnerable than
Yeah.
people. Hi, Shapa.
Hi, how are ya? And Mia also said they alternate between calling to reassure me that people are strong and panicking. So, yeah, I mean that totally makes sense. And it's I don't know, like it's so hard to think about, like that's all like that's aside from all the stigma of people
Yeah,
that are moving around or the xenophobia and racism that's happening in the midst of all this. So that's really crazy to think about. Can you tell me like how can we, as people who aren't refugees, come alongside of refugees at this time without coming across like, oh my gosh, I have all the answers, like I can help you, can let me give you a hand up, like, and let me also ask you, does our ability to engage depend on our location? Like if we live in a major city or a certain part of the country, or can all of us participate in engaging?
Yeah. I love this question, and you sent me another question that I'm going to tie in with this one. So
Okay,
I'm jumping ahead, but I think these go really hand in hand. And your other
sure.
question was, why should we be concerned about this? Or
Yeah.
why should we
Why
be
should people care about this?
why should we be engaged? Why should we care? And then what should it look like? I think about what the Apostle Paul said in Corinthians, like, if I have like the great speech and I have knowledge and I have all of these things, but I don't have love, I'm just like a loud sound that doesn't
Mm,
matter to anybody. I think something that um, COVID-19 is teaching us as a people is like none of us get out of sharing our humanity. Like
that's good.
we have a shared humanity, which
Yeah.
is something that I get to experience by living in diversity. But this
Hmm.
is just a next level. Like we're all intertwined and we're all linked. I loved how Brooke spelled it out with how that works in terms of the economy and the market and
Hmm.
money
Yeah.
internationally. And you've been interviewing people not just from the States. You interviewed someone from Hong Kong, and I think um,
Someone
when
in
we
Italy. Yeah.
yeah, someone in Italy. When we think about what it is to love, and if that is a driving source of what we do with our lives,
Hmm.
um, then yeah, what does that love really look like? Because love can be harmful when we think it's being helpful.
Hmm.
Um, but something that I read by one of my favorite pastors. Her name is Sandra Van Altstel, and she's a pastor here at a church in Chicago. She wrote a book called The Next Worship. She's an incredible worship pastor,
Hmm.
and she wrote a lot about diversity. And so her church is pretty diverse, and she wrote that there are like kind of three ways in which we embrace diversity, not just in our worship, but in our love. And the first is in hospitality.
Hmm.
And when you think of somebody who's hospitable, we say, like, we welcome you.
Yeah.
You are welcome here. I think of food. I think of good food. That's one
Hmm.
way, like, people show you love and bring you in.
You're a
You
pretty
sit
good
at a
cook.
table. You shut up. I
I
was
just thought
just
about when
sharing.
I just thought about when you exploded a jar of honey inside your microwave.
Wouldn't be the first or last time.
Okay.
Um,
Please continue.
yeah.
What's up,
Well,
Julia?
I was just telling someone today that these are the first 2 weeks in my life in about 9 years that a student hasn't fed me once a day, which if
Wow.
you look at is both ridiculous and
Hmm.
absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Wow.
I've had to feed myself for 2 weeks for every meal. I'm basically helpless.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
but so yeah, we think about hospitality, but that's just the first step. A
Hmm.
next step when we're thinking about coming alongside and loving and understanding people is solidarity.
Yeah.
I have your back. I'm going to stand with you. And we think about, I think that conversation that you had with your pastor friend Katie
Hmm.
about just the rhetoric coming out of places like our White House right now against Asians.
Hmm.
It's really important for people who are not of Asian ethnicity to say, like, I'm with you. I stand with you.
Hmm.
Um, this is not okay.
Hmm.
And because like discrimination affects my students all the time, but it can
Yeah,
just be such
absolutely.
a invisible presence. And so I think about I walked into class just like a week before we had to let out
Hmm.
for COVID-19. And I have a woman in there, and she's of Central Asian descent, and she and like three other ladies were talking and laughing really loud, and that's not uncommon. They it's a love fest. Like every day's a love fest. My students love
Hmm.
each other.
That's great.
And this one woman's like from Iraq, and one woman's from like this Central Asian country, and one's from Mexico, and they're all just talking. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like cackling, laughing, and they're like, man, like, this student from Central Asia is saying she wants to put a sign on her head that says, like, I am not from China. Um, and I was like, oh, why are you saying that? And she's like, because, like, people, they don't want Chinese people anymore here because of, like, they brought us COVID. And I just had to stop and say, even if you were Chinese, there would be nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong for being Chinese. You get to be here, like, no matter what. We would welcome you. The only person we would say to stay at home right now is a sick person.
Yeah.
And that could be any person. And they were just like, yeah, you're right. And so I think it's just really important that, people are feeling discriminated against, especially people of immigrant and refugee background already feel discriminated against many times.
Yeah, that's what Mia said. Do you want to read her? You want to read her comment?
Yeah. Also, immigrants in America have already lived the chaos of changing rules, family separation, and fear. They have so much to share with us about how to get through this with grace and love. Yeah.
That's really good. Thank you, Mia.
Yeah. And so when we think of solidarity, we think of, like, we proclaim this message that, like, we all belong, that we all are equal, that we all have, like, from a Christian perspective, the Imago Dei. Every human being bears this image of God, and there's something really mysterious and beautiful about that. But we also all have shared humanity. And so there's solidarity. So we go, hospitality, we welcome you. Solidarity, we stand with you. And the third thing is mutuality. We need each other. I cannot be who I am meant to be without you. And you cannot be who you are meant to be without me. And that is so true in my life with the people that I get to be with every day and who have made my life for the last 8-9 years so incredible and joyous. Like, my life, why should we welcome people from other countries? Why? Because we will lack so much if we don't welcome and stand with them. Because our stories won't be as full of hope. Because we won't know strength and resilience, because no one can wear strength and resilience like immigrant and refugee people, Just
I know, Lauren, I'm crying too. You're making me emotional.
Yeah, I just feel it in my bones because my students taught me every day what that means.
Yeah. I think, like, even with Mia's comment about just immigrants in America having already been in so much chaos, and I think about my own life, like, my family immigrated when I was super young, and we became permanent residents, I think when I was in 8th grade, like a little bit after 8th grade, but right before that, there was an incident where my mom almost got deported just because of some bad paperwork. And I just remember how fearful I was, like how scared I was. And I remember, I think we've talked about the story before, but I still remember the image of, like, getting on the edge of my bed and getting on my knees and asking God to not let my mom get taken away. And I would do anything to get her to stay. And, like, I think it's hard for most people in the United States, whatever race you are, when you've grown up here, like, to understand the terror of losing privilege and rights in one fell swoop. And I think for me, like, just that's such a small thing compared to what most of your students have been through and what so many other immigrants in America have been through and are going through. And, like, I think I love what you're sharing about mutuality and just the blanket of humanity that lives in all of us, right? Like, for us, we may never experience it. Like, a lot of us in here are probably lucky that we'll never experience it like that. However, like, man, can we try to understand? Like, I think that what you're sharing is so important. Can you kind of talk to me about, we've talked a lot about we should care, like, if we're followers of Jesus, if we're Christians. Okay, but what if you're not? And I think that the issue of immigration is so polarizing in our country right now, and it's so easily made very political. Do you have do you have thoughts on why a general American, whether they believe in Jesus or not, whatever party line they toe, why should we care?
Mm-hmm. I think I would just say it goes back to the idea of mutuality for me. Like, we will lose out, and we have lost out on so much by not welcoming and standing with people of different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And if our story really is a history of, if in the United States, it's truly a history of people from other countries coming here and making it, or coming here and, like, able to find a new life.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we be extending that? Shouldn't we willingly be extending that? And maybe some other people on here have some more thoughts on that.
Yeah, please share if you guys have more thoughts. Lauren says, wow, what an important conversation. Needed this. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Hannah. It's not even done, and I'm like crying and also very grateful. Yeah, I think there's so much too of like, like I think because, again, I grew up around a lot of immigrants and mostly Chinese, but I think across the board of most immigrants I've met, everybody comes with this idea of like America is a land of opportunity and hope. And I think like if you've lived here long enough, like we feel pretty jaded about that of like, okay, whatever. But people are coming into our country really believing that and wanting that and hoping for that. And I just think like, man, we have the opportunity as individuals to make that reality for some people. We may not be able to give them a job, but we can give them a place in our hearts and in our families, and we can give them an opportunity to teach us things and to value and validate their experience. And I really love what you're sharing about that. Can you also talk a little bit about, your first thing was about hospitality, and obviously we're all supposed to be staying in our houses right now. So what does that look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I wanted to, kind of pivot now and talk about what can we do? What can we do? And so if we're really like loving, not in a hurtful way, it means we're listening. Maybe I can't sit across from you right now at a table.
Yes, Ethan, this is a hate crime from Hannah. She sent me this shirt for my birthday like 4 weeks late, and she didn't even sign it. So I was like, who sent this to me? Why are they reminding me of my obesity?
Even Samir, you would. Oh my gosh. How am I supposed to come in from that? So
sorry.
I think in a really strange way, this is what I'm gonna say. What do we have more right now than we've like ever had in our life? Time. We have so much time. What can we do with that time? Maybe for one of the first times, I don't know, maybe it's not your first time. How about you take some time to listen to stories and to people of immigrant and refugee backgrounds sharing their stories. And so this is when I want to give a shout out to my friend Jake Mal, who's on here. He's at Beyond Sound Bites. He curated this beautiful podcast in which people of refugee background in Turkey and Central Asia share their stories. And he's also got some other great people on his podcast. Karen Gonzalez, who is a woman from Guatemala. She works at World Relief as well. She wrote a book called The God Who Sees, where she dissects the Bible and immigration and how movement and immigration is essentially throughout the whole Bible. And so he interviews her. It's just like a really great podcast for you to just hear firsthand accounts of people who have lived that life. And then another really, really amazing resource for you to be able to listen is my friend Alana's project. She bicycled. I'm an English teacher. Bicycled. You do that again?
No.
She biked across the continental U.S. in the summer of 2018. Wow. And every place she stopped, she interviewed people. And she did it, I mean, her and Jake, I mean, I just get to sit in rooms with them on a regular basis and hear them think through ethical storytelling and just they're just very thoughtful people, and their
Yeah.
interviews are so quality and full of integrity in how they share these voices. So
Mhm.
you can follow Alana's project at Beautiful Crossing, that's
Mhm.
Instagram, or thebeautifulcrossing.com is her, or Jake
Cool.
is it, or can you double check that for me real fast? So you can click on the map in the states that she cycled through, and
Mhm.
she'll have interviews there, and you can just listen to people tell their stories of
Oh,
coming to
that's
this country.
amazing.
It's amazing. So I think one
Wow.
way to this hospitality is to like get schooled, or to
Mhm.
like read some really incredible books like Welcoming the Stranger, or The God Who Sees, or The Next Worship, or
Mhm.
any of these that are just going to help you to engage, and then to know kind of where to start when you think through like how to give or open your home when you can, or
Yeah.
whatnot. Um, Another thing to think about right now is that people who are living in the United States in an undocumented fashion um, were essentially cut out of the stimulus package,
Mhm.
and so any person who is undocumented can also file for something called an I-10, an individual tax identification number. And that means that even if you don't have paperwork to legally be in the United States, you still pay your taxes. You
Mhm.
still pay your taxes with every paycheck if you've registered for an I-10. So
Yeah.
these are taxpayers. They're not receiving any support from the
Mhm.
stimulus package. But not only that, I just read an article that if anyone in your family, in your home, not in your family, but like in your family that's in your home, anyone under your roof, if you have a social security number, but say your spouse has an I-10, and this isn't just for undocumented people, this is for um, just anyone who's like doesn't have a social security number yet. They may be using an I-10, right? So maybe they
Mhm.
have, a different form of being in the country legally, but they have an I-10. Any
Sure.
person who has I-10 but is in that household has now, every person in the household is disqualified from receiving any money from the stimulus package.
Oh, so wait, so say that again, that if there's anybody in your house that is in an I-10, has an I-10 instead of a social security number,
Yeah,
then everybody in the house is invalidated from receiving from the stimulus package.
that's right.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, yeah. So there are I like to read the actual immigration policies and laws for myself,
Hmm.
but the stimulus package bill was 800 pages, so I could not do that. So I went to a couple of different websites that I check on. Like they dissect those different laws and policies, and they look into what does
Sure.
this mean. I think it was the National Immigration. Let me double check. National Immigration. I think I sent it to you too, maybe, Christine. Uh,
Probably.
let's see. National Immigration Forum, the National Immigration Law Center. They
Mm,
dissected that 800-page bill
mm,
and or the stimulus package, and that's what they discovered when they did that. There's
wow.
a really good article in the Miami Herald that kind of talks about it. So yeah.
So is there something we can do about that? Like, is there a way we can help? Is there a way we can assist?
hmm Yeah, so this is where it gets tricky because I feel like I'm in the community that I'm in, and so like I know Border Perspective says forum, National Immigration Law Center, not forum. Um, but I would say that there are some pretty practical things you could do. Like I really loved, Christine, that um you advertise that Chinese restaurant that's in Tucson
Hmm.
on your Instagram, and you're just telling people like just go here. I think just being aware that a lot of the local restaurants that are maybe owned and operated by people of immigrant and refugee background, they might not have funds to fall back on. So thinking
Yeah.
about when you order from them,
Hmm.
maybe order more from them, maybe tip them really well.
Yeah.
Um, I also say I don't know, I've been going back and forth. Is this helpful or not? But I believe strongly that people of faith have the Holy Spirit and that the Holy Spirit is guiding us. And that's so broad and it feels so general to say, but here's an example of how that kind of worked out with my friend Marissa. About 3 weeks ago, she called me and she said, I've just been feeling like I'm really fortunate and I have funds to get through COVID and I still have a job. And I've just been thinking that you work with people who probably are going to lose their jobs through this and experience a lot of income instability. So I'm just going to send you some money. And I want you to just pray about it and then give it to whoever you think needs it the most. And I was like, oh, this is a great
Hi, Becky.
responsibility. This is a great responsibility, but okay. And she sends me $1,000.
Holy cow.
And so I
No,
prayed
I'm
about
not,
it.
Becky.
That shirt really, I just did you a big favor, Christine,
Did
in your
you?
life.
Did you?
No.
Okay, so sorry. Hi, Katie Reich. You were saying that your
So,
friend Marissa sent you $1,000 and asked you to pray
yeah,
about it.
and just give it to whoever she trusts me. So I pray about it. I feel like I'm supposed to give a really significant part of that funds to somebody. She's my hairdresser. She's a former student. I know that her salon closed. I know, but I just am like, this is this big part of this money. Like, I don't know, but I prayed about it. I just felt like it. I call her. When she answers the phone, she's crying. And
Mm.
I'm like, what's happened? And she said, I just got back from the doctor. I have really low cholesterol and they prescribed me medicine. I don't have health insurance and I can't afford it.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, yes, this is who this is supposed to go to. Like,
Wow.
yeah, so I don't know what that's going to look like in your
Sure.
life. And I do have some organizations that I think it would be great for you to donate to.
Mm-hmm.
But I also would encourage you because maybe it's not an organization. Maybe it's like something different. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to listen and to be informed. That so we don't just run out to be those helpers without
Yeah.
the knowledge,
Yeah.
without the guidance of the Spirit. There are some organizations. Preemptive Love Coalition is one
Yes.
organization that works with refugees and asylum seekers at the like in border communities.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just really love what they do and their philosophy behind a lot of what they do. They're currently going into refugee camps in Syria where like no one's going, and they're
Mm-hmm.
raising money and giving food out to people who would otherwise have no food.
Wow.
That's a great organization. I really love Hope Border Institute, which is El Paso, Juarez, and Kids in Need of Defense. So that's an immigration nonprofit that does like immigration legal services for children.
Okay.
Something that's also really sad right now is that immigration courts, they haven't stopped doing, they haven't stopped having court even for
Wow.
children. Yeah.
Wow, that's
And
crazy.
detention centers still have highly like health vulnerable individuals
Yeah.
in them, packed cells.
Yeah.
So another way that we can stand in solidarity with people is to be informed, like reading the news and figuring out what's happening. Maybe in Arizona, where you live, and where maybe some of the people listening, are there detention centers right now where people aren't being released to
Yeah.
isolate?
Sure.
Maybe calling your senator, maybe calling your your representatives
Yeah.
and talking
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, it's great. I mean, I feel like this conversation has been so personally illuminating again, I think one of the things that for me that God has been unfolding in the midst of this pandemic is like my sense of privilege, and just all the things that like, and I think for all of us, like a lot of us at least in here, we have so much privilege. We have so much. And I was listening to a sermon the other day that was so convicting to me of like, if you're a follower of Jesus, now is the time to be more generous than ever. It's not time
Yeah.
to hoard your money. It's not time to be like, oh my gosh, I got to save to make sure I can make it through this thing. Like we believe in a God that has unlimited resources and that cares about the vulnerable and the marginalized. And it's all throughout his word that he welcomes the stranger, and he cares about the poor, and he cares about people who have no one else to care about them, you know? And I think it is our duty and responsibility to make those moves, not to be a savior, because we already have one of those. But I think I love what you share about mutuality of like, we have so much to gain. We have so much to learn by asking people to tell us their stories. And I think for me, like, you know, like the people that I've gotten to know personally in my life that are from an immigrant background or refugee background, like I know that like there's never in my life, I don't think there's ever going to be a moment in my life where I go through what they've been through, and I have so much to learn in the ways that they're moving through this world and in our country, and I think like that's part of like breaking down our own selfishness and pride, right? Like we think we have so much to offer because of our social status or wealth and affluence, and really like, especially if you're a believer in Jesus, like God doesn't look at that stuff to see value.
Preach. I
Your
think
friend,
something else that,
sorry, I was just going to read what your friend said about this
yeah.
organization, an organization called Abara Frontiers. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I'm Chinese. is another organization in El Paso, Juarez, that's working to support migrants in shelters in Juarez, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. I think something that you just said is really true too, and that I've been really tempted, and I think a lot of us are tempted to stop at the comparison of like, man, I have it so much better off than some people, which is like, I should be thankful for what I have, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we think about it, if that's where we stop, that's actually just a really kind of self-centered way to make ourselves happier. So like compare ourselves to people
Wow,
who
why don't you
have
just
that.
roast all of us?
And I'm roasting myself, right?
Yeah, that's really good perspective. That's very true.
We have to move past that to saying like, okay, I do have more. Cool. Now, like, what does that mean? What does that look? And that's going to look different for each person. And I think it is a good thing to know that we are in a fortunate situation, and to know that we have resources. And but yeah, I just want to encourage us to move past just that mindset. It's a really natural thing for us to like compare, you know, but let's move past it into something deeper.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Hi, Chelsea Jones.
I also was just thinking one more thing, and it's I never, like, Christine, I think your family story is just so amazing and beautiful, and I just, you guys did have like a lot of pain from that happening with your mom, and I just want to validate that like as a little kid you shouldn't have had to go through that because some person at DHS or like ICE didn't stamp something correctly. That was so stupid. You know, like, I don't know.
Thank you.
And it shaped you, and I don't know.
Well, I think that, you know, like, I know I'm on the other side of it, right? Like, I think, you know, I'm not saying that God caused that. That's not my theology. But there is a sense of like, for me, walking away from that, I wonder if I would be less compassionate, less empathetic if I hadn't gone through that, you know? And I think for me, like my parents and their story are my biggest inspiration. I talked about this a little bit in my talk with Brooke about the economy, but like they came to the United States and they didn't have an income for the first 9 years we're here. And then when they finally got a job, like I didn't know that, like their job didn't pay them. They paid for rent, and they survived on $5,000 for a year and a half with 3 little kids, you know? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I literally am like, I can't even think. I'm so stressed about my financial situation sometimes, and I'm like, I'm fine, like. And I think there's so much to learn from those moments, and I was just thinking about like, yeah, like we all carry a legacy from our family history, from our friends and our
Yeah.
community, but like we could widen that, like what if we pass on to the next
I love that.
generation a level of resilience because we learned it from our immigrant friends and neighbors? What if we passed upon them courage because we got to know a friend who is a refugee and their stories ingrained so deeply in us? And so I really appreciate everything you had to share, and I feel like I'm going to think on it for a really long time. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Enjoy.
so let's finish on a fun question. What are the 3 shows or movies you would recommend to watch during quarantine?
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, we just finished This Is Us.
Oh, me too.
So good. It was so good. It's very emotional.
Mm-hmm.
That was really good. I can watch Jane the Virgin. Just 5 seconds. Netflix isn't fast enough. I just love. Like, get me the
I
next.
haven't actually ever watched an episode of that, so I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great kind of adaptation of telenovelas, which I do love. But I won't suggest another telenovela, although I could. Let's see. And what else? What's the third
Lauren
one?
loves Jane the Virgin too.
Oh, Lauren, of course you do. Cole says unorthodox.
Oh, I just saw that dropped on Netflix. I wanted to watch it. It looked good.
Yeah, that was fascinating. Very well done.
Okay, I'll probably have to watch it. I'm watching Tiger King right now based on everybody else's recommendations in the last couple of days, so I'll get to that one next.
Yeah, so Cole, I was talking to my brother on FaceTime, and he said something about Tiger King, and Cole like popped his head in, and he said like it's even crazier than it looks.
I know. I'm on episode 3,
watched it.
and I'm like, what is like? I feel fearful, but also thrilled. So I'm like, I think I'm doing the right thing by watching this. So
yeah, I haven't watched it, but I'm like, if it's crazier than it looks, I don't think I could handle it.
I mean, I'm into it right now. So, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Oh, see, Chelsea says, "Oh, sweet Moses, it's so bizarre."
Moses.
I mean,
Thank you. Chelsea's commentary is one of the only ways to watch a television show. Her Bachelor tweets.
Yes, I do like those.
Oh, thank you, Chelsea Jones, for that in the world. Thank you.
We love you too, Lauren. Thank you,
Yep.
guys. Thank you, everyone, for just your very thoughtful comments and what you contributed to the conversation. Like for me, it's some of my favorite stuff. Like, obviously, I love talking to people I love, but then just to get to see other perspectives of people I don't know, like, that's so cool for me. And I learned so much in this conversation that I have a lot to process later on. So thank you so much.
Can you just show your shirt off one more time for all of us?
Oh my gosh, dear Lord. Guys, here's the facts. Here's the facts. I was 21 pounds when I was 6 months old. So, okay, bye, everyone.
You were so fat, you hurt your mom's back. Bye.
Okay, stop. Bye.